Good evening, everyone. This is a continuation of the Gold Star Medical Billing School Boot Camp for Billing and Revenue Cycle Management. And today's program is going to be two parts. The first part of our program tonight is going to be on how to file and track insurance claims. And then the second part of the class is going to follow up on the tracking part of the insurance claims, and we'll have a discussion on how to conduct claims investigations and appeals. Now, this is really the meat and potatoes of a medical biller, so this is a very, very important class to help give you insight into the whole process of filing claims, tracking claims, making sure that claims are how that process works from the minute those claims are initiated all the way through to its final conclusion. And so please pay attention. Make sure you take a lot of notes. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, for those of you who attended the webinar on Monday, that was part of the entire series as well. And the handouts for the majority of tonight's class were on Monday's webinar invitation, but the handouts for this particular segment on how to file and track claims were not included, so I just recently emailed those over to you all, so you should have them. If you didn't get them for some reason, let me know and I will resend them, but I believe I did get them out to everybody. If you don't have time to print them before we complete this segment, don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and you can just take some notes, and you should do fine as far as following along. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who've been taking my billing and collections classes, you've seen this chart more than once. And so, but I do like to start all of my billing and collection classes with this chart to remind everybody how important it is to collect a dollar when the dollar is due. Because if you have patients and you let those patients walk out the door without paying their portion, as the account itself ages and as that balance ages, whether it's patient money or insurance money, that money begins to devalue. And you can see that through the course of a year, a dollar is going to devalue to about 25 cents. So you're going to lose 75% of your revenue generally if you do not practice timely filing of claims and timely collecting of insurance and patient accounts. This is the study that was done several years back by the Commercial Law League of America, took into account 50,000 different businesses and how they operate their accounts receivables. And healthcare was also included, and in the many, many years that I've been doing this, this chart is very, very accurate. So when you factor in the amount of time that is spent if you're having to track down claims that haven't been paid, if you're looking at the amount of possible lost revenue for an improperly filed claim and possibly having that claim be denied, all of this factors into the reason why that dollar devalues. And then of course on the patient side of it, it all has to do with getting that money from the patient while they're thinking about it or while they have that money in their hands. If you wait and you bill a patient, let's say 3 months after a claim is processed, some of them will tell you that they don't even remember seeing the doctor. It's been that long. But it's very, very important that you collect that money in a timely fashion. So we're going to talk today about on Monday we talked about the patient side of collections and how to effectively collect the patient balances from patients, whether they're in the office or whether you're sending them out statements. We talked about all of that, and today we're going to talk about the insurance part of it. So before we get into the actual how-tos of sending out claims, we need to have a backstory of what causes a claim to be to happen. So I always talk about the life of a claim, and so a claim is going to start off as raw data from your practice management software program, and then from there it's going to be transferred onto a claim form, and from there that claim is going to be transmitted or filed to the insurance company. The insurance company will receive the claim, they'll process it, and then they will either pay, deny, or delay that claim. And if it's not paid properly, then the claim will be appealed and the process starts all over again. So this is the general flow of a claim. Let's take a look at some of the detail on this. So when we talk about raw data, we're talking about information that is being keyed into a software program, a practice management, essentially, or patient management software program that contains all the information needed to generate a claim to an insurance company. And that is going to contain everything from the patient demographics, about the patient themselves, about their insurance company, about the provider that's rendering the services, and about the codes that are being submitted on the bill. And so I have a saying, and it's garbage in, garbage out. Computers are pretty, hold on, I have a chat here. Vicki, you should try to call in. Can you hear me? So, you know, there's an old saying in billing, garbage in, garbage out, and computers are very, very smart. They will do exactly what you tell them to do. Computers are smart, but for the most part, at least as it stands right now, they're not that intuitive. So they can't guess that you may have keyed in an incorrect zip code. They can't guess that you may have gotten a policy number incorrect by transposing two numbers or leaving a zero off or adding an extra zero. It will basically take whatever data you key into that practice management software program, and from that data it's going to create a file, an electronic file that will be considered a claim, and that claim is going to be what's transposed to the insurance company. So everything has to be accurate. It doesn't only have to be accurate, it has to be perfect, because if it's not perfect, it means you're going to be filing an incorrect claim, and that could lead to denials. Sometimes the claim may get paid, but it will get paid incorrectly, and then you're going to have to go back and fix all of that. So this is a very, very important concept of making sure that you are being extremely meticulous about the data that you're putting into your practice management software program in order to ensure that those claims are being processed correctly. Now, as a medical biller, you may not have control over all of this. For example, it may be up to the front desk to key in the patient information. So when a new patient comes into a clinic, that information might be typed in by somebody else other than you, as far as the patient address and their name and their telephone number and so on and so forth. And so you may not know that when you're billing out the claims, but you may be responsible for putting in their insurance information and for the coding of those claims, or entering in those CPT codes for the services that were performed. So that would be your responsibility for the most part. So you just need to make sure that the data that you're submitting is accurate. The CMS 1500 form is the form and format that's used to send a claim to an insurance company. 95% of actually 99% of insurance companies will will send out their claims utilizing the CMS 1500 form. Now, that form can be in an electronic format or in an actual paper format, but either way, whether it is a paper form or an electronic form, it has the same fields. And so one of the things that is going to be important for you to do as a medical biller is learn the claim form and learn what fields contain the different pieces of data, because it's going to be the missing data from those fields that will cause claims to either be rejected or denied or paid improperly. This is a universal claim form. Almost all of the carriers will use this form, and it's called the CMS 1500 form. You may occasionally hear it referred to as a HCFA form, and HCFA stands for Healthcare Financing Administration. That is the old department before CMS was formed, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And so for many, many years, Medicare was governed under HCFA. Now it is administered under CMS. But some of us old-timers that started out when Medicare was under HCFA still will have a tendency every once in a while to call that form a HCFA form. And so if you hear that, just realize that we're talking about the same form, the CMS 1500 form. So let's take a look at this form. And this is actually an older version of the form that was replaced at the end in April of 2014. And for many, many years, the form was the way it looks now. I mean, it was from about, I think it was from about 2000 all the way through 2014. So for about 15 years, this is the format of the CMS 1500 form. And you'll notice that the form, even today, contains a total of 33 fields. So one being up at the very, very top left-hand corner to 33, box 33 being at the very lower right-hand corner. The new CMS 1500 form, this is an example of one, also has 33 boxes, but the big difference between this form and I'm going to go back up to the old form is box 21. So if you look at, I'm going to use a highlighter here. If you look at box 21, okay, box 21 basically has 4 fields, 1, 2, 3, and 4 fields, and this is where the doctor would put the diagnosis codes, and this is for ICD-9 codes, okay? And so what you will notice is that under the, let me erase that. Hold on. Okay, and what you'll notice is that under the new form, box 21 has enough fields for up to 12 diagnosis codes, and it will also accommodate a longer data stream, because the old diagnosis codes, the ICD-9 codes, were up to 5 characters. The ICD-10 codes, as you know if you took the coding class, are up to 7 characters long. And so the entire form needed to be changed, and not only the paper form, but the electronic structure of the form needed to be changed. So when we're looking at the CMS 1500 form, you'll notice right here that there is a solid red line, okay? And the solid red line basically divides the form into 2 parts, and then there's another subpart that starts here at box 25. So when you're looking at this form, the part of the form at the top represents all of the patient information, okay? And so this is going to give you everything you need to know about that patient. Their name, the name, for example, box 2 has the patient name. Box 4 has the insured name. So if the patient and the insured are one and the same, then those two names will be the same. If the insured is somebody different, so let's say, for example, the patient is let's say you are the insured, okay, and you have a child and the child is the patient, then the child's name is going to be listed in box 2 and your name is going to be listed in box 4 as the one who carries the policy. And then what it will ask on the form itself in box 6 is the patient relationship to the insured, and so then in this box it would be marked as the child. So the patient relationship to the insured would be the child of the insured. And so, so basically all the information that the insurance company needs to know about a patient is contained in the top half of the form between boxes 1 and boxes 13. Box 1A is a very important field because it has the insured ID number, and this is where you would put where the policy number populates. And again, you know, the old days when I first started doing this, I had to put this blank form into a typewriter and type it all up individually. Now, with computers, all of this information is contained in the practice management software program, and when a claim form either needs to be printed or an electronic version of this form needs to be sent to the insurance company, then what is going to happen is the data from the practice management software program is going to essentially populate all of these fields for you, and that's why it's so important for you to fill out and make sure all of the patient demographics are correctly entered into that patient management program. One of the things to be aware of when you're billing out claims is that the patient name and the insured name has to match exactly what is on the insurance card. So if you have a patient, for example, that goes by a nickname, and I'm an example of that, my name, everybody knows me as Lisa Majeski, and yet my legal name is Elizabeth. So my driver's license, my insurance cards, my passport, all my legal documents have the name Elizabeth on it, and my insurance card says Elizabeth as well. So I have to remember many times, you know, I've made the mistake of when I call in to make a doctor's appointment, I just say this is Lisa Majeski. Well, you know, that's fine, and they can have Lisa in the computer, but they have to remember then, and I make it a point to remind them to put me down as Elizabeth, and then have somewhere else a nickname as Lisa. So even that, if you put in somebody's nickname versus their legal given name or their birth name, then the insurance company may deny that claim, saying that they don't recognize that patient as the insured. Another important box in the top of the top 13 boxes is box 12. And I know it's hard to read. You may have to get close to it. It says in box 12, this is where the patient releases medical records. And it says, I authorize the release of my medical or other information necessary to process this claim. I also request payment of government benefits either to myself or to the party who accepts assignment below. And then box 13 says, I authorize payment of medical benefits to the undersigned physician or supplier for services described below. So basically, box 12 and box 13 are the release of records and the assignment of benefits. Assignment of benefits essentially means that the patient is authorizing the insurance company to send the check to the doctor instead of sending it to the patient. And when a doctor is in network with a particular insurance plan, if they're contracted with that plan, most of the time it is required for the patient to accept assignment. But if the doctor is out of network and they don't belong to that plan, the patient can leave box 13 blank At the very bottom of the form is box 27 that says accept assignment, yes or no. And if the doctor marks no under accept assignment, that would mean that the check would go to the patient instead of the insurance company. I'm sorry, instead of the provider. And so those two signature lines are extremely important, and the patient is actually required to physically sign an authorization for release of records and an assignment of benefits authorization the first time they come in to see the doctor. Now, for future claims, this signature can be on file. So where it says signed, it can say signature on file. But in order for you to send out a claim that says signature on file, the signature has to be on file somewhere. So it needs to be somewhere in the patient file where there is a hard signature of authorization for records release and for assignment of benefits. Now, once you get below that red line, that dark red line, you're going to get into the claim information. In other words, everything from box 14 through box 24J, okay, and box 24 actually has a number of subfields. Box 24A, you have B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. And so everything from box 14 to box 24J is relating to that patient encounter and the services that were provided. So this is going to let the insurance company know, for example, in box 14, the date of onset illness or injury or pregnancy. And under pregnancy, it would be the first day of the last menstrual period would be the date that they would put here. If it is, and that's important, especially if you're OB-GYN, because that helps determine what trimester the patient is in. And if it's just a normal patient, then it would be whatever date they reported their illness would be the date of onset. If the doctor that is submitting the claim is a specialist, then it's entirely possible that the doctor will be receiving a referral from a primary care doctor or from another physician, and the name of that referring physician must be on the claim form in order for many of the insurance plans to pay for care that's rendered by a specialist, especially if the patient has an HMO plan where they have to see their primary care doctor, and then that primary care doctor has to make referrals to all other medical specialties for services and procedures. So box 17 is the name of the referring physician. Box 16 and box 18, which is the date a patient unable to work, hospitalization dates related to current services, that would be if the patient is being seen by the doctor in the hospital, that needs to be filled out. Outside lab is very rarely billed for, and you'll have other fields that you would need to fill in some basic information like the resubmission code if you're resubmitting that claim, prior authorization number, which is box 23. It refers to if an authorization is needed, the insurance company may provide an authorization number, and that has to go in that field. And so that's just some basic information about that patient and whether they need authorization. But box 21 and box 24 are the two really important fields that need to be filled out when billing out a claim. Box 21 relates to the diagnosis codes, and so that you can put up to 12 diagnosis codes on a claim form. And if you took the ICD-10 workshop earlier last month, you would know that those diagnosis codes need to be placed on the claim form in the correct order of the order of severity and the order of acuteness. So the chief complaint or the most acute or the most severe condition would be in box 21A, and then it would work its way down to, maybe some conditions that are present in the patient file, but they're not necessarily seeing the patient for on that particular visit. And so box 24 then will contain all the coding information about the services. And this is where in box 24A, the date of the service is indicated. Box 24G is place of service. Box 24C indicates whether it was an emergency. Box 24D are the procedures and the modifiers, and this is where you would place the CPT code or the HCPC code and then any appropriate modifiers. And then box 24E is the diagnosis pointer. And so what the diagnosis pointer is let's say you have a patient who has a neck sprain and then they have a low back sprain. And so in box 21A is going to be the diagnosis code for the neck sprain, and in box 21B is going to be the diagnosis code for the low back sprain. So when, let's say, you're coding x-rays and you're going to do an x-ray of the neck and an x-ray of the low back, well, what you would do is you would put in the code for the x-ray of the neck in the CPT code, and then the diagnosis pointer would have to relate back to the diagnosis relating to the neck problem. So the diagnosis pointer for the neck x-ray would be A, and then you would do a low back x-ray, and the diagnosis pointer for the low back x-ray would be diagnosis code B. And so the pointer would have the letter that corresponds to the diagnosis that is placed in box 21. Hopefully that makes sense. But the charges are box 24F. Days or units are box 24G. Now there are a lot of codes that are coded by unit, and units may represent a certain amount of time. So for example, in physical therapy, if a patient goes in for a physical therapy visit, physical therapy exercises there's a code for them. The code is 97110. And so that code, when you look it up in the CPT code book, it will say physical exercises, and then it will say each 15 minutes. And so that means that one unit is 15 minutes. And so it's important when you're reading the CPT codes and you're coding it from the code book that if it indicates an amount of time, that you look at the doctor's note to decide how much time was spent doing those exercises. So if the physical therapist worked with the patient for 30 minutes, you would put in box 24D the physical therapy code 97110, but you would put in box 24G 2 units, because each unit is 15 minutes and they did 30 minutes of that particular service. Okay, and then in box 24J, this is where you indicate the NPI or National Provider Identifier of the person who rendered the service. So, you could actually have a claim form. Let's say you do bill for physical therapy and you have a patient in one day, they go see the physical therapist, and then they have 30 minutes of physical therapy, then they go see the occupational therapist, and they go see the occupational therapist, and then they go see a speech therapist. Well, you could have, since you have room on a claim form for 6 different procedures, you can bill out the physical therapy, the occupational therapy, and the speech therapy code all on one claim, but you would have to have the different NPI numbers of each of the therapists that provided the service. And so you may have the same NPI numbers, but you may actually have different NPI numbers. And again, remember what we're doing here is when we're sending a claim in to an insurance company, we're telling them a story. We're letting them know what happened on that day, who the patient saw, for how long, what it cost, why they saw the patient, why they saw the physician, or why they went for that procedure. That would be box 21, or the diagnosis codes, and so on and so forth. So everything from box 14 all the way down to box 24 relates to the services that were performed that day. Now from box 25 to box 33, everything there relates to the payment for the services. In other words, who needs to be paid for these services? So box 25 would have the federal tax ID number of either the provider or the clinic. If the clinic gets paid and then the clinic pays the providers, then the tax ID would be the tax ID of the clinic. If it's a solo provider, it would be the provider's own tax ID number. 26 is a patient account number, and that is a way to reference back to the correct patient in your database. 27 is the indicator of whether assignment is accepted or not. Box 28 is the total charge for all of the services that day. Box 29 refers to an amount paid, and that is only filled out for secondary claims. So under primary claims, box 29 is always left at 0, but under a secondary claim, what you'll do is you will populate the amount paid by the primary insurance company, so the secondary carrier then knows how much to coordinate the benefits. And I'll be actually recording a webinar on coordination of benefits for everybody who wasn't able to attend that class live, and we'll have a good explanation of coordination of benefits. Box 31 again is a place for the rendering supplier or provider, the physician, to sign that claim form, and essentially it lets the insurance carrier know that, and what the physician or the supplier is doing is signing that to indicate that they are submitting a true claim and they're not submitting a false claim. If you look on the back side of a claim form, and I think I have an example of it on the next slide, there's a lot of fine print, and that fine print actually has an attestation that the information on that claim form is being supported with documentation to support the validity of that claim. And so when the doctor or the healthcare practitioner is signing box 31, they're essentially signing a contract with the insurance company, letting them know that they're not submitting a fraudulent claim, and that refers back to the False Claims Act, which we'll talk about actually in our compliance class next week. So box 32 is the information on where the service was provided, the service facility location information, and box 33 refers to the billing provider or the place to where the check needs to go. And again, the information in box 33 will match up with the information in box 25. Okay, and so in a nutshell, that is how a claim form is structured. When you're working in medical billing, if you call an insurance company to find out why a claim was not paid or why a claim was rejected, they will refer to these boxes. So they may say, well, box 1A was missing information. Or they'll say box 24 did not have that box 24J was left blank, so we don't know who the rendering provider is. Or in box 21, the diagnosis codes are in the wrong order. Okay, and so as you become more and more involved in medical billing, you will begin to learn these box numbers pretty much by heart and know where when an insurance company is referring to box 10, then you're going to know that that is referring to whether the patient's condition was a result of a work injury or an auto accident. And sometimes that will happen where box 10 is accidentally marked yes, that it's an auto accident, and then the insurance company gets the claim. They see that it was related to an auto accident, and they don't want to pay it because they would not be considered the primary carrier in that particular case. And so anyway, this is just information that that goes on every claim in order for you to adequately process those claims. So, okay. So what's going to happen when the claim is filed? The first thing that's going to happen before you file a claim to an insurance company, once you have all the data populated onto that claim form, onto the 33 boxes of the CMS 1500 claim form, you're going to go through a process called scouring, and you're going to utilize several different avenues of claims scouring. And the first avenue of scouring the claim is going to be the practice management software. So essentially what's going to happen is your doctor is going to be working throughout the day, or your healthcare provider is going to be working throughout the day rendering services to patients. All of that data is going to be transferred into the practice management software program, and then it's going to leave you at the end of the day, or once a week or twice a week, just depending on the volume of your practice. It's going to leave you with a bunch of claims that need to be billed, and these are called unbilled claims. And so you will go into a billing feature within the practice management software, and you will run a claim error check. And what that will do is that will run through all of the claims that are in a pending queue or in ready to be billed, and in the software will check for errors. Typically, the errors that are caught on the software level are going to be missing data fields, meaning like there are no diagnosis codes at all. And so what will happen is you'll get an error message saying there are diagnosis codes missing. There's nothing in box 21, or the patient policy ID is missing, box 1A, missing information. And so then what you'll do is you'll go back, read through those errors, fix the errors, and then rerun that error check until you run a pre-claims report that's error-free. And after you do that, some software programs allow you to extract the claims that have errors out and give you time to fix them, and then you can send on the ones that are what we call clean claims. You can send those out and then go fix the errors and send those out. Personally, I prefer to fix all my errors, have no errors for the entire batch, and then send the entire batch out. The only time I might hold a claim back that has errors is if the error is something that I can't fix. So for example, I need a diagnosis code from the doctor, and I know that my doctor may not be in the office for a couple of days, so I will extract that claim with the error out of the batch, put it into a holding queue, and then send out all the remainder of them. But you never want to send out a claim that has errors on them, because if you do, it's just going to delay the process. That claim will get denied. So you'll run the error check at the software, and then what will happen is after you're satisfied that all of the claims are have been handled properly, then what you're going to do is you're going to transmit those and create a batch of claims to be transmitted to the clearinghouse or directly to the carrier for processing. Or if that particular insurance company doesn't accept electronic claims, then you'll go ahead and print out that claim form on a paper CMS 1500 form, like the one we saw just a little while ago. once you have batched those claims, then you're going to send them. Most of you will end up sending out to a clearinghouse. And a clearinghouse is basically a central location for the download, sorting, and sending of electronic claims. So rather than you having to create a batch of claims for Blue Cross and sending them directly to Blue Cross, and then a batch of claims for Medicare and sending those directly to Medicare, all of your claims will be batched together in one big batch. They'll be sent to the clearinghouse, and then the clearinghouse will sort them and send them out to the individual carriers. Now, the clearinghouse will also scour the claims for errors, and these will be called level 1 rejections. And what you'll get is the clearinghouse will scour the claims for errors, and the types of errors that the clearinghouse will pick up would be if, for example, let's say you hired a new doctor and the clearinghouse doesn't have a record of that doctor. If that doctor's information is populated in box 24J as the rendering doctor, the clearinghouse won't recognize that, and it will stop the claim from going to the insurance company until the clearinghouse has more information about that doctor. Or the clearinghouse may scour the diagnosis codes and let you know that you have duplicate diagnosis codes on that claim. So you may have in box 21A and box 21L the same exact claim form. I'm sorry, the same exact diagnosis code. And so what will happen is the clearinghouse will catch that duplication and will stop the claim from going forward to the insurance company, and it will show up on your report from the clearinghouse as a level 1 rejection. Now, that claim must be fixed and reviewed before it will be sent to the insurance company. Now, if the clearinghouse doesn't find an error, then they will send it to the insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier will then scour those claims as well. And the insurance carriers may find errors that the software program didn't find, and they may find errors that the clearinghouse didn't find. Generally, the carrier errors are going to be errors about the patient, like the patient's name is not the correct name. You used the nickname instead of the full name, or the policy ID is wrong. The software is not going to know that. The clearinghouse is not going to know that. But the insurance carrier will definitely know that, because they will scan that policy number that's on your claim form, and if they don't find it, they're going to reject that claim back to the clearinghouse and tell you that they don't recognize that patient as their insured. That is called a level 2 rejection. The clearinghouse will also be the place where EOBs are sent, or remits for printing and posting. So if the doctor has signed up for electronic ERAs, or electronic remittance advice, then those ERAs will go back to the clearinghouse, and the biller will pick up those ERAs and then post them back into the practice management software. So it works like a big circle where it starts in the software, it goes to the clearinghouse, it then goes to the carrier, and then the carrier sends it back to the clearinghouse, and the clearinghouse then the biller puts it back into the software program as a payment. And so many of the remits can be sent in a format called 835, and the 835 remits will allow you to auto post that remit right into the practice management system. It saves a lot of time. It's electronic posting the same way you batch out the claims. You can, with an 835 remit, you can batch the claims back in to the individual patient accounts with just the touch of a few buttons, instead of having to manually go into each account and line item post each payment against each service line, which is very time consuming. So with that said, the clearinghouse is like hub central for a biller. A biller should be working and looking in their clearinghouse every single day, because there's constantly going to be reports being generated by the clearinghouse. There'll be reports coming back from the insurance company. There may be EOBs or remits coming back from the insurance company, and it's all going to funnel through that all-important clearinghouse. And so the other thing to remember is that when claims are being scoured, during the entire scouring process, whether they are scoured at the software level or the clearinghouse level, or they reach the insurance carrier but are rejected back to the clearinghouse, all of those rejections are considered to never have been billed, both level 1 and level 2 rejections. Now, if you're taking notes, I want you to take some notes on this. One is that there is a difference between a rejected claim and a denied claim. So a rejected claim is a claim that was never entered into adjudication by the insurance company. So in other words, the insurance company may very well have received it, but because they did not accept it for processing and they rejected it back to the clearinghouse, that claim is considered to never have been billed, even though the insurance company received it. And certainly if it gets stopped at the clearinghouse, it's never been billed. And a mistake that I see quite often in billing is doctors will look at or billing offices will look at their software, and it will show that all the claims were billed, and they'll say, well, I don't understand why nothing is getting paid. We billed everything. But then when you go to the clearinghouse, you see dozens and dozens and dozens of claims with errors that got stopped at the clearinghouse. So even though the practice management software says that this is the date it was billed, that's not necessarily true. The date it was billed is the date that it was received by the insurance carrier and accepted for processing. And you will receive reports back from your carriers to the clearinghouse letting you know that that claim was accepted indeed for processing. And only at that point can you sit back and take a deep sigh and realize that that claim has now been billed. Why is it so important to know whether a claim has been billed or not? The reason for it is because if a claim has never been billed, then and it's left unbilled, or if it's left with errors at the clearinghouse, or if it's been rejected back to the clearinghouse with errors from the carrier, and it's never fixed, and you just sort of sweep it under the carpet and, I'll get to it later, and then you never get to it, then timely filing rules apply. And every carrier will have rules as to how long you have to initially file a claim. And some of them are as little as 90 days. So for example, United Healthcare, they have a 90-day timely filing requirement. And if a claim is not filed within 90 days of the service date, and you file it after those 90 days, they will deny it for timely filing, and you'll have to write off the entire balance and refund the patient any money that was paid out to them. And so the sorting and the scouring and the fixing and processing of claims is paramount to ensuring proper payment of those claims on the back side. This is a snapshot of what a pre-billing report might look like. So I just took a little piece of it, and I kept it pretty generic so that we wouldn't violate any patient confidentiality, but essentially this would be an example of a claim that you might see on a pre-bill report. And so this is actually a chiropractic billing office that we do billing for, and you have your service dates. So this represents 1, 2, 3, 4 service dates from 3/7 through 3/29 of 2013. It shows the CPT codes that were billed and the modifiers. So this little 25 here is a modifier out, against the 99203. And it tells you what service codes were performed. It has the spinal adjustment of 3 to 4 regions of the spine, therapeutic exercises, and then the new patient evaluation. And then it has the rehab code and the spinal manipulation code for the other dates of service. But you'll notice that this particular pre-bill, and it says here billing preview, okay, so this shows that we're previewing the bills before we send them out, and it says here that we're missing the primary diagnosis code. That's an error. We have to make sure that there's a diagnosis code attached to each one of these claims or it will not go through, okay? And the software itself won't even let you create a claim for batching for these dates of service until that error is fixed, okay? So again, if your doctor drags their feet and doesn't get you diagnosis codes and 90 days goes by and it's a United Healthcare plan, for example, then you might as well just write that off, because even if you do try to bill it, it will get denied for timely filing. Now, if any of you have any questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute and pipe up, okay? This is a snapshot of what you might see as a level 1 clearinghouse report. Now, what did I say level 1 was? Level 1 are basically claims that go to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse finds the errors and they stop it from going any farther. Okay, so basically it says here, Office Ally is the name of the clearinghouse. Okay, so it says your claim file has now been processed by Office Ally. Claims that are accepted below have been forwarded to the appropriate payers for final processing. Processing results for your claim file are as follows, and it tells you that you see how there were claims that were the batch, okay, of claims included Medicare, Blue Cross, some paper claims, and some Blue Card program claims. The total number of claims that were submitted in that batch and the amount of the total amounts of those claims, okay? And this is the total amount that was billed out on this batch, $986.76. And it will show you that it was 6, 10, 16, 17, and 8 is 25 claims, okay? And then if you come down to the multiple payer upload file summary, it says 21 claims initially accepted and 4 claims rejected, okay? And then it tells you what the errors were. Diagnosis code 5 is not billable. Diagnosis code 2 is not billable. Diagnosis code 7 is not billable. And these refer to the diagnosis codes in box 21. Further specification required. That means that these diagnosis codes weren't diagnosed to the highest level of specificity. The clearinghouse caught that and said that you need to diagnose these to a higher level of specificity before sending them out to the carrier. Now, what it will do, it will go further than this, and it will give you error claim detail. Now, I didn't show you the detail because that refers to specific patients, specific claims, and specific dates of service, and that would violate patient privacy. So, but needless to say, this is what you would be looking for, or something similar to this is what you would be looking for every day as a biller, by going into the clearinghouse and looking for claims that have been rejected so that you can fix those and get them sent on to the insurance carrier. This is the snapshot of a level 2 report. So it basically says that here, the following list of claims are the most current responses from their corresponding payers, and meaning that the payers now are responding back to the claims that were submitted. And so basically it will tell you that these claims were, that there were a certain amount of claims accepted and a certain amount of claims rejected. And unfortunately, the way this particular report printed is that it's not all it's not all in line with each other, but this did tell us that there were 55 claims accepted, and there were certain claims. There was 2 Blue Cross claims, a Cigna Healthcare claim, and a United Healthcare claim that was rejected. And so, and basically the type of rejection that you're going to see is something like this: invalid data, subscriber and subscriber ID not found, or invalid data, the diagnosis code has been used more than once. And so then it's going to be rejected, and these will be claims that have never, even though they were received by the insurance company, they're never considered to have been billed until you fix them and send them back and receive an acceptance report from that particular insurance company. Any questions on that? Okay. Now, in addition to the reports that you're going to look at from the insurance company, your software program will also allow you to print a report. Every time you send a batch of claims out, you're going to want to print a report of that batch. And why do you have to do that? The reason, there's several reasons. One is you want to match up the batch that you billed out against the batch that was received and sent by the clearinghouse. Because sometimes within a batch of claims, you may have, for example, maybe you have a new patient and they had a new insurance company. And in your practice management software, when you set up a new insurance company, you have to assign the clearinghouse to that insurance company. Well, since it was brand new, you set up the insurance company, but you forgot to check the trading partner ID of Office Ally, for example, as the clearinghouse, and so that claim never made it to Office Ally because the trading partner was not indicated on that new insurance plan. And so you're not going to know that. So what's going to happen is that claim is just going to go nowhere. It will be on the report as being billed, but it'll never have been submitted to the clearinghouse. And so if you go into your software and you have a billed claims report, it will give you your totals. It will tell you, you billed today, you billed out 53 claims, of which 50 were electronic and 3 were paper claims. So what that means is you would then have to look for those 3 paper claims that you were supposed to have billed out and ensure that you actually printed those 3 paper claims and mailed them out. And then you would take that billed claims report or something similar to this, and you would then look at the clearinghouse to make sure that they received 50 claims. So if they say that, you know, if the billed claims report says that 50 claims went electronically, you're going to want to see 50 claims sent to the insurance carriers. And if they say they received, let's say the clearinghouse does tell you that they received 50 claims, but they only sent 48, that means that there are 2 claims that were in error and they're sitting somewhere at the clearinghouse waiting to be fixed. So these reports are your checks and balances to ensure that you're getting your claims billed out completely and accurately and with no errors. I have an old saying in billing, and that is that your goal as a biller is to touch a claim one time. And in order to do that, you have to get it right on the front end. So if you're not careful about what you're sending out to the insurance carriers, if you're not pre-screening your claims or running pre-bill reports to check for claims errors, possibly missing modifiers or missing information, and you're having to do a lot of fixing and a lot of rebilling, that's going to take up a tremendous amount of your time and energy. And if you would take the time, a little bit of extra time on the front end to make sure that everything is correct, that everything matches up, that what you've billed out from your software matches up to what was received at the clearinghouse, and that matches up to what was sent out to the insurance carriers, then on the back side of it, as these claims begin to come back in, you'll have less work to do and less follow-up work, because it's that backside work, the follow-up work, that takes up so much of a biller's time. So get this right. Take a little bit of extra time to be thorough about this and do all of your checks for your claims and so on and so forth. And what you'll find is that your jobs overall will be so much easier. So now there are a few carriers that still don't accept electronic claims, and you will have to know how to submit paper claims. Most personal injury claims and some work comp claims are still being filed on paper. So if you are working for a doctor who works on auto cases or does workman's compensation cases, there's a lot of paperwork involved. Claims need to go along with doctor's notes, and so in many cases personal injury claims are still filed on paper. Secondary claims some will still have to be filed on paper, and the reason why is because in order for the secondary carrier to coordinate the benefits, they need to see a copy of the EOB from the primary carrier. And so it's for most secondary billing, it's easiest to just print up a secondary claim form and send the EOB from the primary carrier along with it, so that the secondary carrier can coordinate the benefits. Make sure you check your claims for accuracy and keep a copy of the claim for tracking and timely filing if you're filing on paper. You'll have to keep a copy of the paper claim, and my recommendation nowadays would be to physically take those paper claims to the post office, and even if you bill them or even if you mail them, if you take them to the window at the post office and even if you mail them regular mail, you'll have a tracking number, and that tracking number will be the where it was sent to, and it will also indicate the day that it was sent, so you can prove timely filing on paper claims, because it's easy for an insurance company to say, well, I never got it and we never got it in time on a paper claim. On an electronic claim, they can't do that because it's all tracked electronically, but paper claims, you can lose out on timely filing just by having an insurance company say they never received the claim. So what are some of the billing guidelines and some things that you would need to know when you're billing out claims? Number one is bill in a timely manner. Typically once or twice a week will suffice. If it's a larger practice, or if you have software that prompts you to do your billing at the end of each day, and some software programs do that, then you can bill on a daily basis. Always scour your claims before sending them out. Save copies of the transmission reports if the clearinghouse has an archive of less than 18 months. That's the only proof you have of timely filing. So one of the things you need to find out from your clearinghouse is how long do you keep those reports. If they keep them, if they say, well, we only keep them 6 months, then you want to make copies of them, because you may have to go back and prove timely filing. Make copies of all paper claims and EOBs that accompany them for the secondary bills. And under paper claims, if you're sending out paper claims, it's fine for you to send out, let's say you have four patients that are going to the same carrier. You can send out multiple claims in one big envelope, but I will usually recommend that you limit it to 6 claim forms and make sure you use accurate postage so it doesn't get lost or come back to you. So what happens when the claims come back? And this is where we begin the process of tracking claims. And And what's going to happen when a claim comes back is you're going to receive something called an RA or an EOB. This is called remittance advice or explanation of benefits that is going to explain the payment and any adjustments made to a claim during the insurance carrier's adjudication. They provide the itemized claims processing decision of information regarding payment, what amounts of the claim went to the patient deductible or copay, or what we refer to as the cost share of the patient, any adjustments that need to be made to the claim, such as contractual write-offs, whether a claim was denied, whether it's missing data, whether a refund was taken, or claims withholding due to secondary payer situations. So the remittance advice is going to provide justification for the payment as well as input to your accounting systems and receivable ledger applications. So in other words, the remittance advice will tell you what to put back into the patient software program to let the doctor know and the clinic know what was paid, what is still owed by the patient, and so on and so forth. The codes, there are codes that will be contained on the remittance advice that will help you identify any additional action you may need to take. So, for example, some remittance advice codes might indicate that you need to resubmit the claim with corrected information, while others may indicate that you can appeal a payment decision. Carriers will send the RAs in either electronic format, an ERA, or a paper format called an SPR, Standard Paper Remittance Advice. Although the information that the two formats provide is similar, the ERAs will offer some data efficiencies not available in an SPR, such as the auto posting back to the software. And also, many times under the ERAs, you can sort the ERAs by different codes and different patients and so on and so forth. And so it gives you the ability to track things a little bit better. Using an ERA is going to save time and increase productivity by providing electronic payment adjustment information that is retrievable and storable. Trading partners, meaning clearinghouses and software companies, can exchange an ERA with a lot greater ease than an SPR or standard paper remittance. ERA advantages would include faster communication and payment notification, faster account reconciliation through electronic posting, automation of follow-ups, generation of less paper, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of benefit to an electronic remittance advice versus a SPR or standard paper remittance. So what kind of information does the RA include? Number one, it's going to provide detailed payment information about healthcare claims, and if applicable, describe why the carrier hasn't paid the total original charge. The RA codes will help the provider understand the actions the carrier took while processing the claim. And the second half of class today, after our break, I'll be talking to you in detail about these types of remittance advice codes. They're called CARC and RARC codes, and I will give you a lot more detail about those in the second half of the class. And so the remittance advice is going to explain why a claim was denied. You may get a remittance advice with no payment. And why would that be? Well, it could be that the entire balance of the claim went to a patient deductible. So you'll get a document from the insurance company, an RA, that says, you know, here's what was submitted to us. This is the patient's cost share. And for this particular claim, their cost share is 100% because they had to meet their deductible. And so all you'll get back is a piece of paper, and there will be no check. But that still has to be annotated back into the software program so that the software can generate a statement to that patient if the patient hasn't already made their responsible portion and taken care of that. So anytime, you know, any type of situation on that claim is going to be explained under the RA. There are different code sets that you're going to see on a remittance advice. Number one, you're going to see the CPT codes and the ICD-10 codes. Occasionally an RA, if you're billing out dental, the RA may show you CDT codes or national drug codes if you're doing pharmacy billing. So those would be the code sets that explain the services and procedures and maybe diagnosis codes. But then there are the non-medical code sets like the CARC codes, which are the claim adjustment reason codes that, and again, I'm not going to take time right now to talk about this because I also have a detailed explanation of CARC codes and RARC codes in the second half of the class. But basically, the CARCs will, those codes will give you information about why a claim the amount was reduced or denied. The remittance advice remark codes or the RARC codes will further explain the reason for that denial or adjustment and let you know possibly what you would need to do to either appeal that, or if there is additional information that the insurance company needs, it may be indicated as a RARC code. And then you have the provider level balance reason codes. These describes adjustments the carriers make at the provider level instead of a specific claim. So, for example, Medicare, right now the government is in what's known of as sequestration. So what that means is that every provider has a small portion or percentage of their total payment withheld from them as Medicare sequestration, as a government sequestration. And it's usually, 10 cents, 15 cents, maybe $1. It's not a huge amount of money, but it is an amount of money that the doctor doesn't get paid and that they cannot charge the patient for. And so if that's the case, then that amount needs to simply be written off the claim as a provider level balance adjustment. So if you've done everything right and if you have filed the claims correctly and they've been entered into adjudication, then they're going to go through processing part with the insurance company, and you're going to receive a remittance advice. And so when you receive that ERA, you would post the decision and payment information automatically to the appropriate beneficiary accounts if it is in an 835 format. You would look at that RA. Even though it comes in an electronic form, you should always look at the RA for denials and for reasons for adjustments to see if there are any weird ones that you need to be following up on that may not be correct. And note when an EFT payment is issued with the ERA, note when it's going to be scheduled for deposit. So, sometimes the EOBs or the ERAs come electronically to the clearinghouse, but the check itself is going to be deposited directly into the doctor's bank account or the clinic's bank account. And so the ERA will tell you when that's going to happen, and if you want to, then you can match up the posting date for that ERA to the date that it's supposed to hit the bank account so that that information matches up. You may want to, after you have posted the ERA, you may look to see if there is a secondary policy, and if there is, you would submit a paper secondary claim when appropriate to the other healthcare plans with an attached printout of the primary carrier's ERA information. And then, of course, look for errors and avoid future errors by identifying potential problems with the way the original claims were submitted, and make sure that you fix that for any future billing. If you receive a paper EOB in the mail, then you can, in those cases, you would have to manually post those into the patient accounts. And that would involve a little bit more time. It might involve you having to go into each individual patient account and and then keying that in manually, so it does take more time. You would use the paper EOB to correct any errors that you may have encountered during claims processing, and then use the paper EOB to build secondary healthcare plans. So going back up to the electronic ERA, remember that even though you receive an ERA electronically, you will still be able to produce a paper copy of it. And I recommend that. I recommend that you put your eyes on a paper copy of that ERA to look for it, information that may not be correct, that needs to be worked on and appealed. Okay, so we're going to take a break now, and we are actually going to, the EOB reviews portion of this is going to be done at another webinar. After our break, what we're going to do is we're going to move into the follow-up of claims and how to appeal claims, how to track them, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead. It is right now, it is 7:20. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back at 7:30.
Hello, Susie. Oh, yes, but I found someone yesterday. Somebody, I left a message with call me back, so I just went ahead and do it with them. But let me ask you something. What do you charge? What do you charge for shih tzu? Now, I go over my over. Just a little summer cut. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Shit. Huh.
So, as I was saying, coders and doctors, before claims are sent to the billing department for transmission, they need to be coded correctly with the correct procedure codes, the correct number of units, correct modifiers, and correct ICD-10 codes. The billers will look for this. They will look for incorrect codes, but sometimes they don't catch that. And so if the coders and doctors can do their part to make sure that everything is coded correctly, it makes it a lot easier for the billers. As a biller, to vet those bills before they get sent out to the insurance company, print your print and view a pre-bill report, look for errors, scour your claims. Look for common errors and fix those so they don't keep coming up. Look for common errors such as missing patient information, incorrect codes and modifiers, missing CPT codes, and incorrect ICD codes. Billers, when you're vetting the claims, you're going to want to make sure that the claim batch matches the number of claims billed. Verify that the claims were all accepted by the clearinghouse and correct them immediately. Verify that claims were accepted by the carrier and correct the level 2 rejections immediately. It's important to go to the clearinghouse every day to find these reports because they don't all come in at once. You're going to get reports coming in and going out every single day from different carriers. So check for claims also that need to be filed on paper. And again, make sure that everything matches up. So once you have submitted a set of bills, you're going to want to make sure that those bills match up with the bills that went out from the clearinghouse and the bills that need to go out on paper. Now, this is just sort of an illustration of the consequences of a bad billing procedure. So if you have to touch an improperly paid or processed claim more than once, it means you're going to have to do anywhere from 4 to 5 more steps in order to get it paid. If you do it right, then all you're going to find is that you bill the claim and then you're going to get something back and you'll post the payment or the denial. Sometimes it's denied correctly. It doesn't necessarily, denial is not always a bad thing. It may be denied because it went to the patient deductible, but that's a correct denial. But if it's not paid properly or if it's not denied correctly, then you're going to have to do 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. You're going to have to launch an investigation into that claim. You may have to rebill it or appeal it. You may have to go into multiple levels of appeals. If the first appeal doesn't work, you may have to go to a second level of appeal. And then you're going to have to post that payment or denial and then let the patient and the provider know what happened. And so there's a lot more work involved if the billing isn't done correctly from the get-go. So what happens to a claim once it leaves the building? The first thing that's going to happen is that the electronic claim is going to be received into the system. The payer can receive the claim directly from the provider or through an intermediary such as a billing service or clearinghouse. Then the claim is pre-screened for missing information. And next to that you see the word CO16 denial. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. After the electronic claim is received by the carrier, then the patient eligibility and benefit level are going to be determined. So that means that the insurance company is going to look at whether the patient has benefits for that service. They're going to look at the medical necessity of that service by looking at the diagnosis codes that were submitted and the CPT codes. And the insurance carrier is going to determine if payment is warranted, and then they're going to apply the contractual discount. So the payer is going to reduce the provider's bill charges on the submitted claims to their individually contracted discounted fee schedule or the maximum allowed payment. So if a doctor belongs to a PPO, for example, then they have agreed with that insurance company to accept what the PPO will allow as the fee and the paid in full fee for a particular procedure. So for example, let's say the patient or the doctor bills out a service code that's worth $100. Okay, the payer is then going to determine if the patient is eligible to be paid or to receive payment or benefit for that service code. The insurance company says, yes, I see that this patient is covered and I see that this procedure is covered under their policy. Then what they're going to do is they're going to say, now let's see what the doctor contract is. So we see that the patient has a contract with us. Now let's see if the doctor has a contract with us. Yes, the doctor does have a contract with us. And so the doctor has agreed that even though they're billing out $100 for this procedure, they're going to accept our contracted fee, which is $70. Now, what happens to the difference between the $100 that the doctor billed and the $70 that the payer allows under the contract? What happens is there is a differential between those two numbers, and the differential is written off. So nobody collects that. The patient isn't responsible for it, and the doctor just simply needs to write that off because that is what they agreed to under the contract. So now you have a $100 procedure that is now worth $70 after the contractual discount is applied. Then the next thing that's going to happen is the payer is going to further adjust the payment by applying any special payment rules. So, for example, let's say that procedure had a 52 modifier, and a 52 modifier means a reduced service. So that means that the procedure was not it wasn't fully executed, or it wasn't utilized to the maximum amount of time for that procedure. So let's say, using that physical therapy visit we were talking about earlier this evening, 15 minutes is considered one full unit for payment purposes. But let's say the doctor only did 7 minutes, and that wasn't the full 15 minutes. So they tell the insurance company that we did not do a full 15 minutes. We did only 7 minutes by putting a 52 modifier on that service code. And the payer will then adjust the payment accordingly. They'll pay at a reduced rate because they know that the full 15 minutes wasn't performed. That's a payer payment rule. And then they will look at the patient benefit and the cost share and determine if the patient is responsible for any portion of that. So let's go back to our $100 procedure that now the payer has determined, yes, the patient has benefit for it. They're covered, and that procedure is covered under their plan. Yes, the doctor has a contract, and the doctor has agreed to accept $70 for that procedure. So now we have $70 left in which payment is going to be considered. But before the insurance company pays anything, they're going to look for edits, such as modifiers, and they're also going to be looking at the cost share. And the cost share is, what is the patient responsible for this procedure? It might be that they have a copay, and they have, let's say for that procedure, there's a $30 copay. So now the payer is going to take that $70 that's remaining and apply the $30 copay to that particular procedure. And so now there's $40 left, and that's what's going to get paid to the provider, is $40. So $100 gets billed, $40 comes back. All right, and that is the final payment on the claim, called the auto adjudication. And then finally an EOB or an ERA will be generated, and that payment will be sent either electronically to the doctor's bank account, or a paper check will be cut, and an EOB will be sent in the mail. And if the patient did not authorize assignment, then the money goes to the patient. But most of the time the patient does authorize assignment, and so the payment goes to the doctor. Common reasons insurance companies may deny, delay, or partially pay a claim would be, these are probably the most common ones: medical practice processing errors or lack of supporting documentation to support a claim. Insurance company processing errors, yes, believe it or not, the insurance companies do get it wrong from time to time, and they will process claims incorrectly. When they discover that, then they usually reprocess them and send you the difference, which of course Of course, yeah. Dawn is yes, they do. You know, and then that creates a bookkeeping nightmare for you as you have to readjust those claims back. But you know, they do figure it out eventually if they have made processing errors. Um, so sometimes an incorrect modifier, or if a modifier was not used, that could cause a claim to deny. A application of a fee schedule allowance that will cause a claim to be reduced is the fee schedule, the difference between the billed amount and the allowed amount. Sometimes insurance carriers will, for example, if a doctor is not in network with an insurance carrier, let's say they're out of network with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Well, what Blue Cross Blue Shield will do, and what most insurance carriers will do, is they will send an RA, remittance advice, or an EOB back to the patient, and it will show the amount that was billed, and it will show the contracted amount as if the doctor was in network. But when you look down at the bottom of the EOB, it will show that the difference between the billed amount and that contracted amount is going to be the patient responsibility and not the responsibility of the carrier to write it off. So the patient's going to get that EOB and they're going to say, well, how come I have to pay this when it's showing a contractual allowance? And then the doctor says, well, it's because I'm not in network with your plan, and so I don't have to take the contractual discount. The patient says, well, you mean I have to pay it? And the doctor says, yes, you do. And then the patient says, well, if I go to a doctor who's in network, will I have to pay that? And the doctor's office says, no, you won't. And so then the patient leaves and they go to an in-network doctor because they realize it helps the patient realize the extra cost they're incurring if they go to an out-of-network doctor. So insurance carriers will apply the PPO discount even when no contract exists. And in some cases, if a biller doesn't realize, they see the PPO discount, but the doctor is out of network, and so they go ahead and write it off, not realizing that the doctor is out of network and they don't have to. So as a biller, you have to be, if you have a doctor who is out of network on certain plans, you have to be really, really careful about interpreting those EOBs and watching for these discounts and not writing them off, but applying them over to the patient responsibility. And then, of course, a big reason why claims may be denied is for medical necessity. And usually medical necessity denials are driven by the ICD-10 codes, the denial codes, and or the ICD-10 codes not being coded to the highest level of specificity, or not being coded in the correct order, or the diagnosis code doesn't match up to the procedure. And so there's a lot of reasons why that could happen on a claim. So earlier today, or earlier this evening, I was talking to you about common denial codes, and the first set of denial codes that you may encounter on an EOB are called CARC codes, Claim Adjustment Reason Codes. And those are the codes that will help determine whether there is going to be a change in the payment amount. And those CARC codes are all numbered from number 1 all the way down to a zillion. There are literally hundreds of CARC codes, and they are standardized codes that most insurance carriers will use. But preceding every CARC code, you're going to see one of these groups of letters, and these are called claim adjustment group codes. These are attached in front of a CARC code to indicate the responsibility of the payment or the denial. So if you see a code that is preceded by CO, that means contractual obligation. Now, a question was raised in class on Saturday when I taught this live, is if you see a CO denial, do you have to write it off? Because it says contractual obligation. And the answer is no, and this is very important, and it's going to be on your test, so make sure you remember this, okay? Because this is probably one of the most common mistakes that billers make. They will look at an EOB, they will see a CO denial and automatically write it off. And the CO means contractual obligation, but it is also can be for incomplete claims. So if you see a CO 16, for example, the CARC code 16 means that the claim contained insufficient information to process. That claim was never even processed. So you're not going to write off a CO 16 denial. You're going to fix that claim and then send it back through. The contractual obligation simply means that it is the doctor's responsibility or the contracted provider's responsibility to fix that claim and ensure that it goes through correctly. So just because you see a denial that starts with CO, contractual obligation, you have to read the reason for the denial carefully, and you have to determine if this is a denial that needs to be appealed. So if it's a CO denial, let's say it's a CO 50 denial, and 50 is not medically necessary. That's what the 50 means, is not medically necessary. So you see a CO 50 not medically necessary, well, you know it is medically necessary. And it could very well be that maybe you didn't have a correct diagnosis code, or possibly did not have or the diagnosis codes weren't in the correct order. It could have been something like that. And so you don't write that off. What you're going to do is you're going to take that amount of that denied claim and you're going to put it into a pending status and appeal it before you decide whether you're going to write that off or make it patient responsibility. You can't just automatically write off everything that has a CO in front of it. That is one of the dangers with auto posting, is the computer may look at everything with a CO denial and automatically write that off. And so that's why it's important for you to look at the claims carefully even before you auto post, to extract those CO denials that possibly need to be investigated or appealed. So CO, though, stands for contractual obligations. CR stands for corrections and reversal. This is a situation where the insurance company may have overpaid the doctor by paying a claim twice. Maybe the claim was billed accidentally twice. The insurance company didn't pick it up and they pay it twice. And it happens, even in electronic claims. And so 2 months later, the insurance company runs an audit, finds the error, and they then proceed to take back that money on somebody else's claim. And that's called a correction and reversal. So what you'll see is you'll see a payment, and then you'll see a negative payment, and then there's no pay for it. And it will say something like CR, whatever the reason is, CR 18, which is correction and reversal for a duplicate payment. And of course that poses kind of a bookkeeping nightmare for you as a pay poster, to make sure that the patient who it went against is not the patient that the correction should have been made on. So you're going to have to do some accounting finagling in your program to make sure it all adds up correctly in each of the patient accounts that it involves. OA is other adjustment, and you'll typically see this when there are secondary policies involved. I'll show you some examples of that. PI is payer-initiated reductions, and PR is patient responsibility. Your two most common group codes are going to be the CO and the PR codes, either contractual obligation or patient responsibility, followed by other adjustment, and then the CR and PI codes are rare. Okay, So this is an example of the CARC code. So again, each code is assigned a number, or each explanation is assigned a number, and that number never changes. So the CARC code for number 1 means deductible amount, and number 2 is a coinsurance amount, and a number 3 is a copay amount. So these are going to usually, you'll see these on an EOB, and they will be preceded by a PR. So it'll say PR1, patient responsibility, the number 1, and the number 1 means deductible amount. Okay. Some other examples of CARC codes. 11. So for example, I want to go back up to the. So number 4, it says the procedure code. So if you see a CO4, it'll say the procedure code is inconsistent with the modifier used, or a required modifier is missing. So again, going back to what we were just talking about, if you were to just write that off, what it's telling you is that there's a missing modifier. And so if you go back and fix that and correct it and rebill it, you may get paid for that. But if you write it off, it's simply going to come off the claim, and you'll never have a chance to rebill that. Okay? CARC stands for Claim Adjustment Reason Code. Some other CARC numbers are 11. So 11 would be probably a CO11, and it would say the diagnosis is inconsistent with the procedure. So maybe a diagnosis code was used. The doctor had seen the patient a month ago for a cold, and that was the diagnosis code that was in the computer. And so the next time they see the patient, it's for, they cut their finger with a kitchen knife, and the doctor did a procedure where they sutured up the finger in the office, and they billed out for that suturing procedure and for the wound debridement, and they used the previous diagnosis code of a cold, of an upper respiratory infection for that suturing procedure. Well, that's gonna kick a denial of a diagnosis being inconsistent with the procedure. Okay, and so that's where you would get like a CO11 denial. And again, you don't just write that off. What you're going to do is you're going to say, oh, okay, what was the diagnosis we used against this procedure, and we're going to fix that and rebill it. The 16 CARC code is probably the most misunderstood code in billing, for new billers especially, and it is the 16 reason code is that the claim or the service lacks information or has submission billing errors which is needed for adjudication. This, if you see a CO16, it basically is telling you that the claim was never billed because it's missing information, and so it never went into adjudication by the insurance company. It's actually a rejected claim, and what that means is that you can fix it and resend it, but you don't write it off. It's going to say CO16, but you're not going to write that off. The 18 code is a duplicate claim. So if a claim is submitted more than once, the insurance companies most of the time will pick that up and will flag it as a duplicate claim, and they'll call it an other adjustment in OA 18. OA 22 means that this care may be covered by another payer per coordination of benefits, and you'll see that often on secondary policies. So for example, if and I'm going to do a webinar on this. It will be a recorded webinar, and I'll send it to all of you so that you can listen to it. It's not going to be a live webinar, but I'll be recording this on coordination of benefits and explaining all the differences in the coordinations of benefits. But one of the things that that happens oftentimes is, let's say two people, married couple, they're both patients at an office, at a doctor's office, and the doctor's office bills a patient's insurance as primary incorrectly. And there are specific rules of, if you've got a husband and a wife, or a parent and a child, and both of the parents are covered, which one is primary and which one is secondary? Well, if it's processed incorrectly and the secondary is processed first, let's say, then they may get a denial back saying that this care may be covered by another payer per coordination of benefits. In other words, they're not the primary carrier. The CARC code 27, it tells the doctor that the expenses, and the patient, that the expenses were incurred after coverage was terminated, and that one would be preceded by a PR. That would be patient responsibility because the coverage is terminated. That would not be a requirement for the doctor to write that off because basically the patient didn't have any coverage. The 29 denial is the one that I least likely, I hate to see on an EOB. Now, you know, many times when Gold Star Medical takes over a doctor's office and we begin doing billing for that doctor, we find that there are many, many claims that were never submitted or were not submitted correctly. And we go ahead and we submit those claims so that we can get the proper denial so that we can write it off. And that denial is going to be the CO29. And we hate to see that. As far as I'm concerned, that should never happen on our watch. So if you're working as a biller with Gold Star Medical, if there's ever a timely filing denial on your watch, then that's inexcusable because that should never happen. As long as you're checking your clearinghouse and you're fixing claims and getting them submitted on a timely basis, there's really no reason for a timely filing denial. And then 31 would be patient cannot be identified as our insured, and again that would be a patient responsible balance, so that would be a PR 31. So let's say we did everything right and it's still, the claim still did not get paid correctly. What do we need to do? How do we go about the process of appealing an improperly paid claim and resubmitting incorrectly paid claims or correcting claims? And so the first thing that you have to do when you are looking at explanations of benefits or ERAs is to fully analyze and understand the reason, the adjustment, and the remark codes on that EOB so that you can move forward with the correct steps to rebill or appeal the claim. So the first thing that you have to look at on the EOB is who's responsible. Is it a patient responsible balance or is it a contractual obligation, and is that correct? Is the claim unprocessable? Is it something that is just missing information that I can correct and rebill, or do I need to do a formal claim correction or a formal claim reopening with the insurance company? And there's a difference. If a claim is rejected, remember I told you earlier there's a difference between a rejection and a denial. A rejection was never processed. The good news about rejections is that you can just fix them and bill them because they were never processed. But once a claim is processed, then that means if you just fixed whatever you needed to fix and resent the claim without any kind of an annotation that that was a corrected claim or didn't go through the correct process to resubmit that claim per the carrier's rules, then the carrier may just flag it as a duplicate and send it back denied. And I talk to doctors about this all the time. They'll call and they'll say, you know, it seems like all my biller does is, you know, is rebill claims, and they rebill and rebill, and they just keep coming back as duplicates and nothing is happening, and that's because the biller is not rebilling them correctly. They're not following the correct steps to reprocess that claim. So if an appeal has to be done, looking at especially if the appeal is being done as a formal appeal by letter, then a letter should accompany the claim and the information that's being requested. A copy of the original claim and explanation of benefit should be attached. Any documentation or supporting material that would support the appeal. And if you're going to send it in by mail, it should go by certified or registered mail to ensure that it's received by the payer. Nowadays, you can do appeals online and go and pretty much every major carrier is going to have a a provider portal in which you will, as a biller, sign up to receive a login and a password, and then what you'll be able to do within that provider portal is check on claims, resubmit improperly paid claims, submit appeals through that portal. But still, there are carriers that require you to do formal written appeals by mail, and you'll have to follow these steps in order to submit an appeal, and it has to be submitted in a timely fashion. The EOB will tell you how much time you have to appeal a claim. It will say, for example, the EOB will say, if you disagree with this determination, you may submit a letter of appeal by writing to this address within this amount of time. Okay? So so you'll know what the process is if you have a paper EOB. Now, one thing you don't ever do, and we just talked about this, is if you have a claim that comes back processed, it was adjudicated, but it was denied, and it is correctable and appealable. Don't just make the corrections and then rebill. It will just come back as a duplicate bill. You need to find out, in that case, you need to find out from the carrier what the procedure is for a corrected bill. And remember that every carrier may have their own rules. I know it would be nice to, do it the same way for every carrier, but it just doesn't work that way. So you're going to have to know all the different rules of all the different carriers, and remember to follow their directions to the letter in order to get that claim reprocessed correctly. I mean, some carriers are so nitpicky that they'll require you to fax it back to a particular number using their fax cover sheet. So you have to go online, print their fax cover sheet, and it'll have a barcode on it, and then you fax it back with that fax cover sheet on top. And if you don't use that fax cover sheet, they won't process it. They won't reprocess it. I mean, that's how persnickety they can be. And so it's very important that you pay attention to all that detail and ensure that you're rebilling those claims correctly. And remember that CO16 denials are always rebillable because they were never processed and they never entered into adjudication. So here are the 7 steps in the appeals process. Number 1 is examine the EOB very carefully. If it's been paid correctly, then all you're going to have to do is post that payment or post the reason for the denial. Let's say it went to the deductible, into the software program, assign the correct responsibility. If the patient is responsible for a balance, you may need to transfer some of that money over to the patient balance. Apply any payment to that date of service or to that claim or to the service code, and then you're done. But if there's something wrong with it, then you're going to have to determine the steps needed to rebill, reprocess, or appeal the claim. If it is going to be, for me anyway, and this is how I train my billers to do this, is that if you run into a situation where it looks like you're going to have to appeal a claim, not just correct it and resubmit it, because that's just going to delay the claim by a week or two, okay? But if it looks like you're going to be in for an appeal where you're having to submit doctor's notes to try to justify why the claim should be paid, if there are problems like that, I will notify the patient and let them know what's going on. And I do it as a courtesy to them because the patients, they're kind of sitting there thinking, what's going on with my bill? What's going on with my account? Sometimes they're afraid to go back and see the doctor if they think they owe the money, so they really don't know what's going on. So as a courtesy, I will call the patient and I will let them know, hey, I just wanted to inform you that we've processed your claim for this date of service and your insurance company has denied it. They're saying that it's not medically necessary. Now, that we believe it is, and I'm sure you believe it is as well. And we're going to do everything we can to appeal this claim, but I just wanted to keep you in the know and keep you in the loop so that if they request any information from you, that you get that information back to the insurance company as soon as possible. Sometimes a claim is delayed because the insurance carrier is asking the patient to provide additional information, and the patient ignores it, and so the claim never gets paid. And then timely filing falls into play. And in a case like that, then it's timely filing on the patient is responsible for that, because they did not submit the information that they were supposed to in a timely fashion. It's not our fault. And so there can be timely filing denials that are patient responsible because the patient did not do their part. And so in that case, then all that money would be the patient's responsibility to pay out. Make sure you document everything you do. Keep copies of all correspondence, of tracking, postage tracking. Document any follow-up that you do, any calls that you've made to the insurance company, documented in the patient notes in the software program, so that your doctor and the patient and the front desk people will all know what's going on. You know, as a biller, you know, whether you're working in a doctor's office or whether you're working at home as a medical biller working from home, you're going to be disconnected a little bit from the patients and from the front desk and from the doctor, because you're back there doing your thing, you know. And so a patient will walk up to the front desk and they'll ask the front desk person, hey, what's going on with my insurance? And a great synergy between you and the front desk is going to be, if you've got good notes, that front desk person will simply go into the notes in the patient account and say, oh, I see Shelby has been checking on your claims for you. Looks like she's called the insurance company 2 or 3 times, and looks like they're going back and forth on this claim, so just hang tight. And I'll let her know that you're asking about it, and I'll have her give you a call and explain what's going on. So, but if you don't have any notes in the account, then the front desk looks at the account, they see that there's a balance owed, but they're like, I don't know what's going on, and it really looks unprofessional, and it makes both the patient and the front desk person feel very uncomfortable. So your documentation is the proof that you're doing the work and you're getting the work done. So you may have it all, nicely in the margins of your AR report written out, on your desk, what you're doing. But if your doctor doesn't see it, and if the staff doesn't see it, and the patient can't find it, it's not doing anybody any good. So you've got to document all your correspondence within that patient software. If you're appealing a claim and you have to follow up on a follow-up, make sure you set up a task system or some kind of a tracking system to follow up on that. So let's say a claim doesn't get paid correctly. You call the insurance company, you find out what's wrong, and you say, all right, if I do this, can I rebill it like this? And they say yes. You'll ask them the question, well, how long is it going to take for you to process this? And they'll say about 2 weeks, or give us 30 days, or whatever they may tell you. Well, you're going to want to follow up on that in 30 days, make sure that got paid. You don't just do it and then let it go. So you have to follow up on your follow-ups, and you need a system for that. Everybody is going to do this a little bit differently. Some people will go old school and basically have a calendar and write in, when they need to follow up on certain things. A lot of us nowadays use like Outlook, and we'll set up tasks for ourselves to follow up on certain claims or call a certain patient at a certain time, using Google Calendar. Sometimes the practice management software has a tickler file that you can use to set up reminders for yourself to remind you to do something on a certain day. But whatever that system is, you need to make sure you have it in place and that you're diligently working that, and then following up on anything that day. And then if you don't get to it, let's say you get busy and you can't get to your follow-up, then you have to forward that to the next day or the next time you're in the office, so that it doesn't fall through the cracks. When the investigation is complete, then you document the outcome. And if all previous efforts fail, working between you and the insurance company, then and you still think that this is a claim that should be paid, then get the patient involved. You may suggest that they file a complaint with the state insurance department. Another thing that you can do with the patient is a three-way call between you and the patient and the insurance company. Get them on the phone and get them involved. It's a very cathartic process to do that, because it makes the patient realize how hard you've been working for them, and it helps them to see just how ornery the insurance company is being about their claims. And so, just make sure, but that would be sort of a last resort type of thing. Now, appeals for Medicare is a little bit different. There's a different process that you need to learn for Medicare appeals. And as you do more and more work in billing, you'll know what these processes are. So the first level of appeal would be called a redetermination. These are usually done online or by telephone like a telephone reopening. Then if that doesn't work, then the second level of appeal would be to send it to a qualified independent contractor who looks at it and determines, it's like arbitration kind of. The third level of appeal is a hearing by administrative law judge in the Office of Medicare Hearings and Appeals. The fourth level is by the Medicare Appeals Council, and the fifth level of appeal is a judicial review in federal district court. And I will just tell you, I've been at this for 35 years, and the highest that I ever got was a third level of appeal. It was actually a hospital claim that was denied for a Medicare patient who needed some diagnostic work done, but she had the diagnostic work. It was, too soon before Medicare would pay for it, but now this patient was showing symptoms and Medicare wouldn't pay for it. The patient ended up having an amputation because of the infection that was a result of not having this diagnostic workup, and Medicare kept denying it, and we took it to the administrative law judge, and they upheld it, and the hospital had to pay out a lot of money to that patient, plus interest, plus pain and suffering and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so there's many levels of appeal. Fourth and fifth levels of appeals is usually just dealing with major situations where there's gross misconduct by Medicare, not paying a claim that results in a patient's death, or in the death of several patients, like a class action type situation. But anyway, I've never done, or discrimination too. I've never gotten that far, and I hope I never do. Appeal letters. So again, if you're going to do an appeal letter, you need to identify yourself as the provider, the information about the patient, the reason for the denial, the information that should be corrected, why you believe the decision is wrong, and what you're asking the insurance company to do about it. So the final thing that we're going to talk about is how we're investigating unpaid claims. So, claims are going to get billed, and sometimes they're not going to come back at all. They're just going to end up in some cyber wormhole, and the insurance company is not going to process that claim. Or they receive it and there's information that's missing that they need from the patient, so they put it in a perpetual pending status. But the bottom line is that you're going to, once a month, you're going to run a report called an accounts receivable or an unpaid system issues. Okay, what am I having here? Okay, we're restarting the recording again. We thought we were having system issues, but we weren't. Okay. So the thing is that when it comes to investigations of unpaid claims, used to be that the only way you could investigate an unpaid claim or an improperly paid claim was to pick up the phone and call the insurance company. But nowadays, with our technology, we may never have to call them, or very, very rarely have to call them, and that is the goal. So one of the things that you need to learn to do as a biller is to learn how to be a good investigator and learn how to correctly investigate unpaid claims. Many times a phone call is not necessary. You sure don't want to. A phone call is going to be the most time consuming, because now you're talking about having to go through all of the prompts, the voice prompts, waiting on hold, sitting with somebody who may not know the answer any better than you do, maybe having to go to a supervisor to find out what the situation is. If at all possible, you do not want to have to make a phone call. So if you have a claim or claims that have not been paid, what do you do? What you do is you have to find out what the source of the problem is. So you backtrack yourself all the way to the beginning. And the first place you look at is the practice management software. You look at that patient account and you look at, was the claim billed correctly from the software? In other words, has it left the building? Are there already notes in the account about this claim? Maybe I've been working on this and it just, I don't know, I've been working on so many different claims I can't remember, but now I see that I've already been doing some work on this and I just need to follow up on this in a few weeks, and maybe right now I don't need to do anything with it. And if everything looks good from the practice management software and it's showing that the claim was billed, the next place you're going to go is to the clearinghouse, and you're going to ask, look to see if that claim was received at the clearinghouse. Now I want you all to unmute yourselves, okay, because we're going to get a little interactive with this, and I want you to be doing a little bit of critical thinking and thinking about reasons why things may not happen. So you go to the practice management software and you look at a claim that has not been paid, and you see that that has left the building. It has been submitted to the clearinghouse. Now you go to the clearinghouse and you look for that claim and it's not there. It's not at the clearinghouse. What could have happened? What could have happened between the software and the clearinghouse?
System issue. It could have just not, it went into cyberspace and never got to them.
It could be. It could be that right at the time that you were transmitting the claim, you had a blip in your internet and your internet went down and the transmission got interrupted. And so even though it says it was billed, because it never got to the clearinghouse, it never, obviously, if it never got to the clearinghouse, it never got to the carrier. So all you have to do is go back and resubmit that claim, right? You're not going to have to do an appeal on that or call the insurance company. Now, if you had taken the tactic of, when you look at your accounts receivable, you see this outstanding claim, and it's like, oh dear, where is it? And you call the insurance company, what are they going to tell you? Well, we don't have it. Well, now you're going to have to backtrack. So you start at the beginning and work your way forward. And that's going to be the fastest way to find out what has happened to that claim. Number one, has the claim left the building? Did it leave the practice management software? Number two, did it reach the clearinghouse? Okay, let's say that it reached the clearinghouse. Is there anything there at the clearinghouse that indicates that it may have been rejected and I just need to correct it and send it out? Okay, well, if that's not the case, I don't see any rejections at the clearinghouse, so now I need to see if I have any level 2 reports. Maybe it made it to the carrier, but there's a level 2 report. Okay, well, there's no level 2 reports. That means that it made it to the carrier, but do I have an acknowledgement that the carrier has placed it into adjudication? Gee, I don't have an acknowledgement from the carrier that they have started adjudicating it. So maybe there was a problem between the system from the time it was sent from the clearinghouse to the carrier. Maybe there was a system problem there. okay? And then at that point, I'm going to call the carrier, or I'm going to go to the carrier website and look to see if that claim has been received at the carrier site. And if I have a claim in pending status, if it says no record of claim, now I know that there was a problem from the clearinghouse to the carrier. And what does that mean? The carrier never received it. It was never billed. So all I have to do is run that claim through again and ensure that this time the carrier gets it. Okay, that's why it's so important for you to run an accounts receivable every single month, because sometimes these things are just going to fall through the cracks. These little claims here and there are going to fall through the cracks, and you won't know it until you pick it up on an accounts receivable. But if you run an accounts receivable, let's say every 90 days instead of every month, you may be past timely filing, and now you can't even file that claim. And so what you're doing is you're going to follow the breadcrumbs. When you're investigating unpaid claims, it's like following a set of cyber breadcrumbs to figure out where the interruption in the claim was, and if the claim did make it all the way to the carrier, and you go to the carrier site and it says claim is pending, and then there's an anticipated pay date of, let's say, 2 or 3 days from now, then you know everything is well and you can expect an EOB in a few days. But if it just says pending and there's no date for it, and it's just like kind of up in the air in this pending status, that's the point in time at which you're going to call the carrier if it's pending with no explanation. Sometimes you'll find that the claim was actually paid, but for some reason the remit never made it back to the clearinghouse, but the carrier has a copy of it, and so then you can download the remit from the carrier site and just post the payment. And so, the doctor may be getting automatic deposits. They're not going to tell you when a deposit comes in. You're going to know about the deposits by the EOB, but if you never get the EOB, you may have to go find it, or have the insurance company mail it to you. So anyway, make sure you're using the proper steps to track down that claim and not just call the insurance company. But there are times when it is necessary to call the carrier, and and if you're going to make phone calls to an insurance carrier, you want to do it in a systematic way. If you're just working off of the accounts receivable report, and let's say the accounts receivable has all the patients in alphabetical order, you may have, Mrs. Adams, who needs to have her claim called in to Blue Cross, and then you may have Mr. Bartlett, who needs to have his claim called into United Healthcare, and then Mr. Chop Shop, who's a Blue Cross patient. And so then you call Blue Cross, then you get on to Mr. Bartlett, and you call United Healthcare, and then you call Mr. Chop Shop's claim to Blue Cross again. Well, don't do that. In that case, what you want to do is you want to group all of your that patient calls together. And so one of the things as a biller you need to do is you need to decide on a certain day of the week to do these types of phone calls, because basically you can't be interrupted because you're going to be on the phone all morning or all afternoon. You're going to want to be organized if you're going to have to do the calls. You want to if you've got 5 Blue Cross patients that you need to call on, put them all together and do that one call, and then you can check on all 5 at once. Now, some carriers will limit the amount of inquiries you can make, but most of them are pretty good about it. They'll just let you inquire until you're finished. So if you have 10 inquiries to make, you can be on the phone with one person, and they'll just run through all of them with you. Especially if they're particularly helpful, you can get a lot done in one phone call by being organized about it. Make sure you have all of your paperwork and your documentation handy, including the EOBs. Maybe a claim got paid one month and the same exact claim didn't get paid the next month. Why? So you get the EOB from the past month that got paid, and you have that for comparison, so you can talk to the insurance company about it and say, you know, hey, take a look at this claim number. This one got paid, but this one didn't. Why? What's the difference? You know, and so you can use past EOBs to help speed up the investigation process. Make sure you write down everything you're told, including the time of the call, the name of the person you spoke to, and you always get a reference number for that call. And don't just ask about the status, okay, of the claim, you know, where is the claim and why wasn't it paid, but you also need to find out what I need to do about it. You know, what do I need to do to resubmit that claim? Don't, you know, sometimes when I'm training new billers and they're on the phone, they're really nervous about the phone call, and so they call to check on a claim and they get the answer and they write it down and they're like, okay, thanks, and they hang up, and then they give me the information and I look at it and say, okay, well, what do we need to do with this? And then they look at me and say, oh, geez, I guess I should have asked. Yeah, you should have asked. And so make sure you take your time on the phone. The way we talked about insurance verifications is be thorough with them. Don't let them rush you through the process because they have a quota of calls that they need to make. You have got to get your answers, so allow yourself the luxury of getting all of the answers you need before you hang up, because the last thing you want to do is have to call back and go through all the phone queues again and be put on hold and so on and so forth. So let's talk a little bit about those phone calls. And you know, my insurance people who are on the line will probably get a kick out of this, but this is very true. When you're calling into an insurance company, you can pretty much bet that the person on the other end of the line has pretty much had a bad day. I mean, think about it. Think about what an insurance customer service rep has to do all day long. They have to listen to complaints, you know, and they have to listen to why did my insurance pay, or listen to it from a patient or from a provider. And so if you can be nice, even though you may be frustrated, you will generally get more out of them. You know, you can get more out of, you know, you can attract a fly to honey. You know what I'm saying? So the person on that on the other end of the line has probably not been having a great day. So try to be nice to them. Use the same exact conversation format for every call so that you don't miss any key information. Don't let them take over the call. You make sure you have a format and that every question that you want to ask is answered. Call on as many patients and claims at once as possible. Always find similar claims that were paid correctly for comparison. And if you don't understand them, ask for an immediate transfer or ask to speak with a supervisor. Now, the reason why I say this is because many insurance carriers have their customer service units overseas. And so many times you're going to get on the phone and you're going to be talking to somebody from India or Pakistan or the Philippines, and they have very heavy accents. And I mean, it's not all of them, but some of them are very difficult to understand. And you don't have that kind of time. So if you don't understand them, as politely as you can say, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. Can I please be transferred to a North American unit? If they won't do that, then ask to be transferred to somebody else or ask for a supervisor if they're not being helpful to you. Document conversation in a way and a place that's easy for everyone to understand, meaning the practice management software program, and document the amount of time you spent on each call so that you're, at the very least, your doctor, then the office staff that you're working with will have an appreciation for the amount of time it takes for you to do these calls, because this is going to be some of the most time-intensive work that you do, are the telephone calls to the insurance companies. For follow-up on a daily basis, you want to check tasks for any follow-up calls to the follow-ups or activities that are due. Leave tasks open for follow-up on the next work day. So if you don't get to it, leave it open so that it transfers over to the next work day. Every week, make sure all of your billing is done and all of the issues in the clearinghouse have been resolved. Don't leave anything over to the next week. Make sure patient accounts, including insurance demographics, diagnosis codes, are current. You may not be responsible for that as a biller, but in some cases you may need to do that. Go to the clearinghouse and carrier websites to pull all the EOBs that are delivered to you electronically for posting back to the patient account. Print and view any unpaid claims reports on a weekly basis and look for claims that should have been paid by now, and then on a monthly basis print a full accounts receivable and look for claims with no activity that have aged out over 30 days. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few documents here that I use basically with my billers, and I actually sent you copies of these. These are really big helps for you when you first start this process. And I mean, I've got billers who have been doing this now for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they still will use these checklists to make sure they're getting everything done, because there's so many little details that you have to remember when it comes to billing out claims. And so this particular one is a billing flow chart. So when you're getting ready to do your billing, you would use this checklist. And the first one, it says post day sheets, get claims ready for billing. That is for our billers who are required to post the CPT codes. But if you don't do the CPT posting, then that would not be applicable. Then you would start the process at the printing and reviewing the pre-bill report for errors, correcting claims, and so on and so forth. So this kind of gives you a step-by-step what to do to make sure that you've gotten everything done, okay? It leaves nothing to the imagination. If there was anything, you know, specific about the bill run that you needed to maybe do some specific notes on, you can do that. Every time you do a billing, you can print this and use this as a checklist for every billing you do, so that it will help verify that you've gotten all the work done that is particular to billing out claims, okay? And then the other checklist is a posting workflow. So this is when the EOBs come back. What do you do? What are the steps that you would take to ensure that all of those EOBs are posted back to the patient account correctly, and going through this checklist, you know, making sure that the payments are posted and applied to the correct dates of service, that the adjustments and the write-offs are posted and applied, and that the payer and the patient responsibilities are correctly calculated. All of that is part of the posting routine. And then you have the tracking of, let's see, did I do this one wrong? Oh, yeah, I printed the wrong one. There was one that was in your email that was for tracking claims, and this one is the billing flow chart again. Another document that I want to show you that also is in your, oh, I think I have it here. This is a really helpful one for when you're calling an insurance company to investigate an unpaid claim or an incorrectly paid claim. You can fill this all out, okay? And you know, you get this is all the information you would need to get to a patient claim. The patient policy number. If an EOB was issued, there would be either a reference number or a claim number to that EOB. You can write in the dates of service in question and the reason for the inquiry. And then, you know, you can actually write all of these up ahead of time and then organize them and then use this to make your phone calls to the claims reps. And so you would get the name of the claims rep, the time of the call, the reference number for the call, and then write down a summary of what the claims rep told you, and then you can write in what action you took on it. So if you rebuild the claim, you can write that down here. Then what you can do is you can either, if you have good handwriting, you could scan that into the patient file, their electronic file, or you can transpose the notes into the patient account. I have some of my billers actually put this information all on an Excel spreadsheet, and while the claims rep is talking to them, they're typing it in. And so this way, all they have to do then is cut and paste the note right back into the patient account. And so they've gotten really, really efficient at it, but they use this kind of as a worksheet. So this is the initial one, and then there is actually one for follow-ups. And it's the same thing, except that this one says, the follow-up. So in other words, and it will give you a opportunity to do more than one follow-up on a form. So this would be the first follow-up that you've done to the original, and this would accompany an original claim investigation form, would be the follow-up forms. And so you can, that's something else that you can use to help in the process of investigating these claims. So that pretty much concludes our presentation for tonight. Do you have, Sherry had a question about how long does an insurance company have to pay a claim? Dawn, do you want to answer that?
Well, it depends on the contract, but generally it's 22 to 30 days is when they try to have them all paid. Mm-hmm. That's a clean claim, though. Yes. Some contracts have 14-day requirements along with the 30-day goal. It just depends.
Yeah. Federally, the federal mandate is 30 days. Okay, now most insurance carriers have their own internal controls where their goal is to get those claims paid within 14 days, like Dawn said, or 22 days. But federally, it's 30 days. And federally, after 30 days, if a claim is not paid, if it's a clean claim and it's not paid within that 30-day period, technically the insurance carrier begins to accrue, you begin to accrue interest. And so the insurance carrier is supposed to pay you back with interest. And interestingly enough, Medicare does that. I don't know very many carriers that do, but Medicare does. Medicare, if they have improperly withheld payment on a claim or didn't pay a claim in a timely manner, then they penalize themselves and pay the doctor interest. It's not much, and it's usually not worth the accounting nightmare that it creates, but it's interesting that they do that. So are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording there.